So, Julie, today I want to discuss this idea of permission. I wanted to discuss this idea of when can you start? And when I say when do you start, so many people like ask us, like, what's it like to work for yourself? And for someone who worked in jobs for so many years, both of us, we spent so much of our careers working for someone else. And now it's like, literally feels like shackles to even entertain the idea of going back and getting paid to spend hours of my life building someone else's dream. What I wanted to discuss today for our viewers and our listeners is, what are some of the most important things you have to do when it comes to your mindset to building your dreams of having your own business?
I would say the first thing that popped into my mind when you said that was a sense of curiosity. Meaning being open to exploring different crevices that are inside of yourself.
I'm not sure where this is going, but so far it's okay.
I would just say that there's so many pieces to us. Like, I was thinking the other day, like, what would I like to do if I could start again? You know,
Didn't I ask you that exact question today and you acted like you have never even thought about that?
I know, but I forgot. There's a momentary lapse in memory. But I was just thinking, like, you know, I love exercise and I love movement and I love what it does for me and what it does for other people. And so I was thinking to myself, and I love yoga actually, but I'm not really great at it. I'm kind of a beginner when you think about it. So I was thinking to myself, I would love to do like a yoga training course, and maybe I could do, again, something I think it's a great example, because when you think about doing something like that, there's different steps you can take, meaning you could take a yoga training course and not necessarily have the intention that you're going to make this a money-making activity. But if it's something that you're passionate about, something that you're interested in, then it's worthwhile for you to explore those things. So that's what I'm talking about, like exploring different crevices inside of yourself. It's like, what for me, what do I love to do? And what do I feel like alive doing? And so when you're doing things like that, it doesn't feel like such a huge pressure to monetize it at the beginning. It's more just exploring who you are as a person and what you're passionate about, because we have a passion and we have an excitement towards moving people in the direction of actually making money through their passions and interests.
So I think I think before we even come on to that, because now we already are a step ahead. Most people have to deal with this concept of identity, of like, who am I? And it was so funny because someone asked me like, well, you know, am I an entrepreneur? And what is an entrepreneur? And again, back in the old days, like, it was all kind of strange to be an entrepreneur. Nowadays, like, everyone's an entrepreneur. And the way I was sort of structuring that question for him, he was actually looking at entrepreneurship as a bad thing, because he comes from an academic background. His parents were professors. And for him, the idea that you would just go straight to the market and just be able to charge money. So I was asking, like, well, what does it mean to you? Like, you said this whole concept of like, even if you're going to move into a place of like even asking yourself, like, what do I want? For most people, they don't even get that luxury. That's not like a luxury that most people are built with, because we live in this society that basically just sort of dictates, in high school, you get trained to go to college. College, you get trained to, well, not really do anything, because like, what do you know when you're in college? And then you're sort of stuck. Like, maybe you could share a little bit. Like, I never knew what I wanted to do, and I still went to college, and I was decent at it, but it was like, I had this existential crisis until I kind of like found a stride that I was in. And also because I just gave up trying to figure out what I was actually going to do. But like, you were going to be a lawyer, but like, talk about that process, about how much difficulty you went through trying to like find your niche, and how much like negative crap you told yourself as you didn't have this kind of clear career path.
I mean, I would say that even now, as we're building this whole business, and as we're taking different, we're stretching on a daily basis because we're doing new things. And that is, I think, the crux of entrepreneurship, is like just kind of going into new avenues and not necessarily knowing where it's going to end up, but with the idea that this is going to help us grow and build, and either it's going to build the business or it's going to build ourselves, or both at the same time. But I don't know if you ever really know what you can do, but not if you know what you can do, but I don't know if you ever get there. Meaning, I don't think we've arrived. I think I ask this to myself all the time, like, what do I want to be when I grow up? I ask that to myself.
That is such an important question, because there's again, college is a business that is selling you its necessity. And so it's forcing you to think okay, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? And if we could just move past that lie, that, like you said, that there is one thing that you have to do for the rest of your life. Some people feel guilt over, I want to start a family. Some people feel like, well, I have a family and I feel guilty that I want to go back to work. A lot, like both of us, candidly, like we never saw ourselves, and it was really hard for me to get over in our initial dating phases that like you didn't want to be a stay-at-home mom because like that's what I saw growing up. Now, on the flip side, now it's like, I value that you don't want to be a quote stay-at-home mom because I love the fact that you are getting out there and starting a business. So I think what's so difficult for so many of us is we've been sort of like forced in this stupid box by a bunch of people that have made billions of dollars off of convincing us that we have to pick an identity. And like you're saying, there's no such thing as an identity. We shouldn't be like who we are, is what job we have, but rather like what are the things that we're interested in, what are the things that we're doing, and then what are some ways that we can monetize that? I think that's such an important idea. And there's always a way to monetize the things that you love and the things that you care about, or just basic, that's the whole idea is like, I remember I had this awful, I'll cry now, but I had this awful experience when I was like finishing being a rabbi. And you remember, like I was meeting with so many people and I was talking to so many people. And honestly, when I was down, like in my heart, I was just looking for sympathy. I was just looking for someone to take me under their wing and to just not let my family starve. And I had been created into such a pathetic, sad state because I had...
What do you mean created into? Meaning, I think everything at every turn is... Again, what do you mean created into?
Well, I think that there's a certain idea that, like with smoking, like people didn't know back in the day that smoking was bad. Now we know that smoking's bad, and you can make a decision whether or not you want to smoke. Right? Okay. That with vaping, same thing. Like when vaping came out, I was like, oh, this is safe. And then it's like, well, that's not safe. But if you know it's not safe, then you're making a calculated risk whether or not you want to do it. Right? With social media, probably we'll see over time, people are going to say like, this is super addictive and you should, again, do it, don't do it, but know the risks. And I think that the really big stuff that's really sucking our soul, like college, like the educational system, like this whole industry of people needing to have jobs and therefore to find their identity in work, I think that these things all need like the Surgeon General's warning, if that makes sense. So I really feel like I was created because I would have loved to have been told. And again, I grew up in a society with, I didn't have like a set strong male figure in my life. I never really had someone that would say, this is what, like you're supposed to do. And my dad, like back in the day when he was around, like he worked for the man. And so maybe he would never, not even give me this advice, but it's like, I was never presented an option that I was supposed to be responsible to kind of both create what I wanted and to figure out that I could create as much wealth as I wanted. I was always sort of looking for who was going to be the person that wrote me the check to enable me not to hate my job and just to kind of do what I wanted. So that's what I mean created. Like I jumped from one organization that I sort of needed meeting from and just wanted like the sympathy of someone else who had, quote, figured it out to sort of like bring me in and give me a job. That was the idea.
Well, can you explain more about the sympathy piece? Because I'm saying like you want sympathy from an employer, you want sympathy from people.
Yeah, I mean at the root of everything, and that's something that we see so much with the people that we work with. The people that are really in the rut of being an employee are always like looking and saying like, well, you do it, or well, what do I do? And we'll say this on calls all the time. It's like, just get those 5 meetings, just call as many people as it take. Like there's this one person that we love very much. And he or she's always saying like, well, I need this, I need that. And I'm like, okay, cool. If you know what you need, do what you need to do in order to get the outcome. Right. But I think that there's such a broken part of us because of how the whole culture works that sort of forces us to sort of need someone else to give us the next step, that we naturally fall onto throwing our hands up instead of just kind of going after what we actually want.
So I have a super interesting question for you, which I think, a lot of people think about. Well, they think, well, he can be an entrepreneur because X, Y, and Z. And they think to themselves, well, I like to take direction. I like to be told what to do, and I like to do a really good job at that. So can those people become entrepreneurs?
Well, I mean, that's kind of what we are building in our business, which is that we have a system. It's done with you, done for you, and you are what's the word of the business thing? You're in business not by yourself, for yourself, but not by yourself, right. Which is that, again, what you said is so smart, which is that you have to have this level of self-awareness to understand whether or not you're a lone wolf, whether or not you're a team player, whether or not you're someone that functions well where you have direction. And then again, that's this whole thing that I'm coming back to about in terms of being responsible for yourself, is find a system that will deliver the results that you want that works with who you are. So again, for us, we love having coaches because we do love to have someone that's been there, that sort of knows the road ahead, says these are some of the steps that you have to take. Now, we will hire the coaches, we will hire our own coaches as opposed to want to work for the coaches, because again, I want my own business, but I like having that direction, if that makes sense. So you're right, you need to have that level of self-awareness. Do I want to figure this out myself? Which again, I think most people are just scared to pay. That when people say that, like, oh, I'm going to figure out myself, like, no, you're not. And if you are, it's going to take you such a long time. It's going to be so expensive that if you could close your learning curve and just ask someone like, you've done what I want, can you show me how to do it? I think that that's what most people are ultimately looking for. That's the vision that I see for our business, which is like, we pay it forward. Like, we've learned how to make, $100,000 a month in coaching. We want to help people learn how to do that as fast as possible without spending the 4 years that it took us to learn how to get there.
And what would you say to somebody who says like, but that sounds great, but I just really need the safety of my current situation. And I don't want to be like stuck, being responsible, like completely responsible for myself.
So I think, it's funny because we're both thinking about the same person. And the reality is, yes, they have safety, but they're always been their entire career unbelievably creative and they're unbelievably talented. And I think that the safety has not come from the paycheck. The safety has come because they know they're exceptional at what they do. And I think that's the big shift, which is that, yeah, it's always going to be, there's one of my favorite YouTube videos ever is that Steve Harvey video where he talks about like jumping off the cliff and you're going to hit yourself all the way down. Watch Steve Harvey clip. We should link it, the Steve Harvey clip. Yeah, YouTube clip. But the idea is like, yeah, there is kind of a terror when you walk away from your employer. But the reality is you could always go back to that. There's never going to be, and that's also like this abundance mentality that I've been so, that I love talking about, which is it's like, if you're good at what you do, there's always going to be someone that's going to want to hire you. Or someone's going to want to partner with you. There's, again, it's like going back to this employee mentality versus the entrepreneurial mentality, which is it's like money, if you are an employee and you don't have it, is like a character judgment. I'm broke, therefore I suck. But if you look at like a lot of companies, they have, cash shortfalls all the time. And so what do? Could be that they go public, could be that they seek funding, could be that they raise from friends and family, right? So if you have that entrepreneurial mentality and you have a cash shortfall, that's like when we're talking to people and we're like, look, we have this business that we will train you how to build this business. And people come back, they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know where we're going to find the money. It's like, well, if you have the idea of an entrepreneur and you have that mindset, you'll find the money because the return will be there. On the flip side, if you're like, I don't have the money, I must suck, I have to go back, like that's going to be much harder to work through.
I think what you said earlier though about the piece of, again, you think the safety is coming from the employer. Really, the safety is coming in your own knowledge of your own skills and talents and expertise coming out to play. So if you're really, really confident in what you bring to the table, then you feel that safety and security in a job, but also you don't necessarily realize this, but you will also feel that safety and security, even though it's a new endeavor, to be able to translate those skills into your own business.
For sure.
I think that part is really important.
And I think also, like you said, now what's the objection that I'm hearing coming up from someone watching this when you say something like that is, well, I'm not good enough. Right. Well, it's, this person's great. And we actually also talked about that this weekend, which is that you have to realize that most people are not that good. Even at the top level, most people are not that good. Like if you watch an amazing, like musicians, most of musicians don't write their music. Some people don't even play their own instruments, right? If you look, you have to actually study the game to figure out, like you see a great coach or a great author or a great motivational speaker and you're like, that was phenomenal. It's like somebody wrote a speech, somebody prepped him on the speech. Literally, he was just a talking mouthpiece, right? And that's like, and you think to yourself like, oh, really? That's it? So number one is like, you don't actually have to be that good at anything, because there's always going to be people that are less good than you that can learn from you where you are. Right.
But that's so interesting, because like it really infuriates so many people. Like if somebody who's less smart or less talented or less good looking or any of these lesses than them are being uber successful. And really the only thing that differentiates you or anyone between those people who are quote unquote less than, but you feel like, hey, why this is so unfair, or like, how does this work, is because those people are going out there and doing it. And that's literally the only difference. It's like, if you show up and you are able to kind of, I don't know if it's called expose yourself or really consistently show up, you will get to, I don't want to say to the finish line, but you will reap the rewards of what you're seeking.
Well, that's the idea of being consistent. That's the idea about being consistent.
But again, consistency wins over all these other things like talent and looks and charisma and all of those things.
Oh, totally. I mean, that was someone mentioned in our Facebook group, like, well, I got a bunch of cancellations over this past holiday weekend, and I'm like, so what? Like, that we all do. But like, what does that mean? That means that you had 5 people that cancel on you, which are 5 calls you're going to make this week. And that's, as one of our dear mentors, Ed Milet, always says, like, your will to win can't be bought, right? Or you don't want it to be able to be bought. So if you feel like you are just, like, again, like, how important are your dreams? How important is creating financial freedom for your family? How important is loving what you do at work? And if the answer is like, it's very important, you can't let this stuff stop you. You have to just keep pushing. And that's something that's so fundamental, because if you actually study successful people, that's the character trait that you see across the board, is that they just have, Patrick Bet-David said this, Warren Buffett's always talking about this, John Madsen's always talking about this. It's like your first things will suck. And the people that win just keep plugging away at it. Warren Buffett plugged away at his craft for like 80 years. And that's why he's Warren Buffett. And even still, he got overshadowed by like Elon Musk and Bill Gates, who have like, as of the time of this recording, like 2 times or 3 times his wealth. But it's like, it doesn't matter. But also, if you look at Elon Musk, he was just swinging for the fences from the time he was a very young kid, right? So it's like, any one of those things, you just have to be consistent and committed to getting the outcome that you want. This coaching business that we're building, this is not our end goal. I'm not staking all my claims on this. This is a vehicle, one vehicle to eventually get us to another vehicle, and that's getting us to another vehicle. It's like, well, at the end of your life, like, what do you want to have accomplished? And it's like, I want to have just pushed as far as I can for as long as I can to create as much value and have as much fun and create as much freedom for myself and for my family, my community, as I possibly can.
And I think that what you're saying, there's a couple of things that I'm also picking up, which is that, first of all, timing is also super important. And meaning, and also just being able to use all the previous knowledge and expertise that you've amassed in order to go forward. So instead of thinking, oh my gosh, that was a deadbeat job and I wasted 5 years, or I wasted 3 months, or whatever it was. No, like, you're always going to have to, did you learn an interpersonal skill? Like, I'm thinking about myself when I was in insurance. It's like, that was a very entrepreneurial endeavor that I thought was like a massive failure, and it took me years to get over. But really now looking back, like, I'm literally using so much of what I learned there to build our business here. And again, in terms of, let's say, like, okay, you want to quit your job and you want to get out of this feeling like somebody else owns your time and your, how much money you earn, and you want to go full time into something else, whether that be coaching or any other endeavor. It's like, you have to time it. That's really, really important, because if you feel like you need people, like whatever you're selling, and you have this neediness around you and your energy, it's always going to be so difficult, and you're going to be going on an uphill battle. But if you start in a manner where you're like, this is additional income, it creates such a positive, expansive energy around you that then you're able to really gain momentum. That's how you did it, and that's how we did it, really, is that you didn't go full-time into your business until we were really secure in the income that we were building.
Yeah, I also think that you have to have that sense of I think that's the one piece that I wanted to talk about, which you were so shocked because you talked to someone who's a therapist and they were so unaware, whatever the word is, and they were so negative, and you're like, oh my God, like you are someone that helps people get over their roadblocks. You are so blocked and so blamey and so full of judgment. Blamey. No, it's true. Like, and it burned you out the whole day talking to this person who supposedly people go to them to help them straighten out their own stuff. And it's like your energy is so crucial when you go on this journey. And that's the whole point. It's like so many people hate their jobs and so many people hate their lives because they spend so much time with their jobs. And it's like, imagine, and this is part of what we try to ask when it comes back to permission, is it's like, there are some people that we work with who love what they do, but they just don't love how much money they're making. So we say, imagine what your life would look like if you could sort of do the stuff that you like to do, but get paid a crap ton more money for it, right? So that was kind of like our situation, right? Where we'll make in a week or a day what we were making over a month or a year, right? So it's like, that's awesome because I always loved my job. I just didn't love being broke, right? On the flip side, other people like hate their job and they're broke, right? So it's like, so of course that creates so much negativity, but if you're going into a field, again, it's just like it's your life. Do you want to hate it? Or do you want to live a life that's exciting and meaningful? And if you have all this like venomous, poisonous energy, like, well, where does that come from? And why is it there? And what could you change so you actually just like waking up in the morning?
Yeah, and I would say even more so, it's not necessarily even that you hate what you do, but it could also just be that you're feeling bored, you're feeling stagnant, you feel like you're not getting the best use of your talents and who you are to the table. And especially when we're working, I mean, it's so many hours of our day and so much actual time in our life spent working that why not open yourself up? Again, what I spoke about earlier, that sense of curiosity, like open up that curiosity within yourself to say, what else could I do that would, energize me? And even if that's not something that's going to be monetized, even if it's just a new hobby, a new, new relationship, like a new, exploring a relationship that's important to you in a different way. That's so worthwhile. But a lot of times we just get so stagnant in all areas of our life. And
if you get stagnant, you should reach out and get help. And I think that's also the most important thing because, again, objectively, our problems feel insurmountable, but the reality is that our problems are only insurmountable because the mind that created it or the circumstances it created are trying to solve it. And again, it's like if you just have to keep pushing forward until you find that person who looks at your scenario and they're like, yeah, I totally understand how to get around that. Because there are no actual problems that are insurmountable. It's just people that are unwilling to surmount their own problems.
Well, again, there are going to be problems that you don't have an easy solution or maybe don't even have a solution, but you can maybe think of a different way around it or something to alleviate. I think that's also a really important piece. It's like, well, I can never get out of this situation. I can never get out of this job, or like, I need this health insurance because I have like whatever special needs kids, or, I'm literally making this up, but again, so fine, you have to stay in that environment, but what can you shift? I mean, there's always something that you can shift.
Yeah. And if you stack those wins, like we say, just stacking the wins inevitably will create the tremendous outcome that we're looking for. So I think that we kind of covered a few different topics today. Hopefully what we did was open up your mind to realize that, there's not like this gifted class, at least in America, at least where we are today, there's not like this gifted class of people that just get to do what they want to do. I've been an executive coach for now going on 5 years. I've worked with unbelievably financially successful people, unbelievably successful people in their relationships, in their business, in their health. And we've also grown as a couple tremendously in a bunch of areas, and people might look at us and think that we're successful. And it's like, these people are people just like you. And if again, it's like, if we demystify the whole system and we're like, no one is born on this mountain. And again, even the people that are born on this mountain doesn't necessarily mean they're happy, doesn't mean they're necessarily growing, but it's like, you have in your hands, just being born at this time, just being born in this world, having access to the information you have, you could actually live the life that you want. You just have to have the fortitude and the courage to actually go forward and to achieve it.
Awesome. I think you said it all.
Well, thank you very much.